Hello, everyone. We've done it. Episode 4 of E2KG Deep Dive. An achievement worthy of remembrance. Because years from now, we're going to look back at, as I bring up the agenda, July 23rd to the 27th of 2018, and think back how monumental and what a great week in gaming it was. I am your host, SwissGuard. I'm joined by my two friends, DBqHams. How are you doing, DB?
I'm doing okay. I'm trying to figure out your great week of gaming in the middle of the summer, at the end of July, right before we get ready to turn the page to head into mid-August and start to ramp up with the inaugural kickoff of the fall with Madden and a whole bunch of indie titles coming out in August for the Switch. And so what makes it a great week in gaming? Or is it really just that you finally had a week to game?
Well, there's that, but if I keep telling myself that, I might believe it.
That's what it is. Does that work the rest of the life too?
No, I'm really a pessimist, so it doesn't work at all.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Good to know. But yes, it has actually been a pretty good week of gaming. We're going to talk about some of that here, and it ties into some good discussion for tonight.
Yeah, tonight I think and tomorrow are going to be interesting on E2KG because Prime started a fever, and the only what was that Christopher Walken quote? The only medicine or whatever it is, more No Man's Sky.
You got a fever.
Yeah, that's it. I knew DB wouldn't let me down.
No.
And we're also joined by Agasicles Stamus, who is fiddling around after he beat on OBS with his digital wrench and rebooted things a couple of times, as he should as an IT guy. Looks like he's doing the social media stuff. How are you doing, Agasicles? He's still beating on it with his digital wrench.
I'm good. How are you guys?
We'll live. All right. So we kind of have two sets of stories tonight. As we're still figuring out, we're still discovering how the deep dive should actually function as a show. So we're going to try it a little different with the way the news is going to flow tonight. So we're going to have one story and we're going to do a shorter discussion. And then we have a few other news stories that we'll bring in later and do a bit of a longer discussion on that. So the first discussion topic and the first story I will throw to you, DB, and it's on EA.
Yeah, so this is EA Origin Access Premier. That's always a mouthful, right? So EA Access is their yearly subscription piece platform for Xbox. EA Origin Access is the subscription for PC using their Origin client. So up until today, actually, this was you still do. You have a basic, which is $30, which treats it like you have Vault games and you have a 10-hour trial of new games and a discount. And then back at E3, EA announced that they were going to do a Premier service, which gave you a day and date with all their new releases. It gave you unlimited access to the game before the early access to the game, right? That it came out beforehand. It comes out 7 days early, and so that is part of it here. So this was it was announced at E3, but it was not given a release date, and they had said that Madden 19 was going to be part of the package, which everybody assumed that it meant that it would be releasing right around the time that Madden would be releasing. Madden's early access comes out on Friday, August 2nd. So last week, during this week here, that EA announced that Origin Access Premier was going to launch today, July 30th. So this is $15 a month or $100 a year. So per month, it's a little more than, this is the interesting piece, right? Per month, it is more than Xbox or Sony's, not Sony's, Microsoft's Game Pass, sorry. But if you buy a full year subscription, it is cheaper. It is only $100. So it drops it down to under $10 a month. And so what that gives you is it gives you access to all of their current games, everything in their vault, which is now up to 124 titles on PC, because unlike on Xbox, the vault games also include a number of third-party indie studios and also some other publishers. Warner Brothers games are in here with the Batman Arkham and a number of Lego games. They're all part of the vault, which means that you have unlimited access to them. You also get 10% off your EA purchases. But I think the two big pieces, the hooks here, are one more piece of content, which I actually just found out tonight when I pulled up my Origin client, was that you also get access to the new releases, but you get the digital deluxe additions to those. So you get the $80 version of Madden with the additional card packs, or you get the $80 version of Battlefield 5 with the additional battle packs. The fact that you get that it makes it a really interesting $100 proposition, where if you would be buying one of these games, you may end up, or even if you're buying two of these games, you're going to see some type of discount. But the hook here is that you don't own them. They are games as a service, right? That this is EA getting you on the hook for an annual subscription, keeping you in their infrastructure, and giving you 10% off of all their other purchases within that client, and that includes microtransactions. And so because this is the E2KG network, we know that microtransactions have been a big staple, or a growing staple, and revenue source for a lot of our big third-party publishers. And so this is, I think that extra 10%, they probably have run the numbers in terms of where people invest and how they're going to recoup that money. So I'm curious, gentlemen, on your thoughts here on both two tracks, right? Like in terms of the value proposition, but also kind of the trend toward games as a service, right? We just had last week we had the rumor about Xbox Scarlet and the streaming piece there. So Zeus, Agasicles, I know this is a question here for collectors versus consumers, and so is this a good sign for PC games where you can already have your license revoked from the publisher, or is this even further committing ourselves and shackling ourselves to the developers?
Yeah, this gets tough, right? Because and number crunching your way through this has never been harder, I think. It presents quite a conundrum for people to sort through. As you mentioned, one of the biggest problems is that when you subscribe to this stuff, it's nicely packaged and you get a lot of stuff, but it's very ephemeral, right? 5 years. I mean, one of the things that I always talk to people about is one of the detractions I always make to media journalists who, will recommend to somebody, hey, don't switch from iPhone to Android because you're going to give up your hundreds of dollars of iOS apps that you've purchased. And I'm always like, yeah, but those iOS apps will still be there, right? If they continue to use an iPad, or when they come back to an iPhone. I bought stuff on my Xbox 360 that's part of my Microsoft account. I left the Xbox ecosystem for 4 years and it was all there when I came back. So when I buy things, it exists in perpetuity, theoretically. And if I ever go away from an ecosystem, it's still there when I come back. I own it, or at least I have a lifetime license to it, at least. You subscribe to this stuff on EA, you rack up a bunch of stuff, achievements, gaming stuff associated with your reputation, but it all goes away the moment you stop subscribing to the service. And at $15 a month, if you pay month to month, this is almost twice as much as your Amazon Prime account. It's a staggering fee to pay, and the thought that you can accumulate all this reputation-oriented stuff and it can just go away is kind of It causes you a lot of deep thought. Which direction you want to go. I don't know, Swiss. What are you thinking about?
So we definitely know that if you let your account lapse, you're not gonna be able to recover anything. Like, how do you think they're going to discourage like somebody from having it for 6 months, canceling, coming back in another 6 months, like next Madden season, playing it for getting the new Madden for $30, and then when they get bored of it, they cancel their subscription service?
So that would work, right? I mean, because it's a subscription service, so that it's tied with your EA account. So if you think about it in terms of if you play one of the ultimate teams in EA sports games, right, that if I bought card packs, my card packs are tied to my account. So if I drop this subscription by the time that the football season's over, and I come back to it 2 months later at draft time because I'm interested, the characters that I have cards for my ultimate team are still going to be there, right? I think that this is of the different services, this one is the most kind of everything's there for you every time you come back to it. It's just not there when you're not paying for it, right? Like,
so here's the slobber knocker, right? It's nice, and I kind of threw that out maybe a little deliberately as a trap, right? It's nice to think that you're going to be able to do without this. It's nice to think that you even have a choice. But when Xbox Scarlet hits and you subscribe to Game Pass and you go with the less expensive, lower end Xbox streaming box, and you have access to Microsoft's content and any publishers that they've brokered agreements with. What I firmly believe is that for the publishers they cannot broker agreements with, that the way you're going to get it is that box is going to be compatible with you subscribing to other services. So I think if you have Xbox Scarlet Zero and you have a very small hard drive, you have no optical drive, you have no means of storing and installing games locally, they're all streamed to you. The way you will have to get EA games is you will have to subscribe to EA Origin and maybe EA Origin Access to get that on Xbox Scarlet. It's going to have to be compatible with Game Pass plus 3, 4, 5. It's going to be the Roku of gaming.
So this is a whole different discussion, and our 15 minutes becomes a whole hour here. Right. But I think the Scarlet question is one that I'm really interested to see where this goes, because is it going to work like Netflix, or is it going to work like Amazon Prime Video, where I'm going to have some things that are going to be in Game Pass that I can stream unlimited, but I can also buy a specific title or even rent a specific title, right? Can I have it for 48 hours and pay a certain amount for it? So I think I'm going to set that one to the side because I can't wait to come back to that, because I'm really curious where that goes. But on EA side here and with Premier, I think that in some ways EA is in a really unique spot, more so than if 2K came out with this, or even certainly more so than if Activision Blizzard came out with this. That so many of EA titles are annualized, or at least they're every other year, right? You get a Battlefield, then you get a Battlefront. You get a Battlefield, right? You get a Madden, you get a FIFA, you get a sports, you get NBA Live, you get those annualized titles. And so for people that are playing those, oftentimes there are, this is the Reddit thread I was looking at today. This is 6 different Reddit posts around Madden 19 is who's going to update, who's going to wait. The same conversation happened last year with 18 is, are you going to wait? Are you going to update? What are you going to do? And so in some ways, this just moves you into that kind of annual subscription of, oh, I'm going to get it. So I also want to say, go ahead, Swiss, what were you going to say?
It's the same thinking that you have now with like Microsoft Office. Like that's what I always end up coming back to is, there was a time you used to buy Office at like, Staples or whatever. And now it's like, you don't even like, they've gone to the subscription thing. For me, we have the annualized Madden and we'll have the annualized Battlefield and everything, but for me as a gamer, like that doesn't fit me. I'm the gamer that's going to be into the Anthem, perhaps, or just the single player or even multiplayer, but kind of story driven tentpole titles. So, you know, to me, paying $15 a month for access to like a Lord of the Rings game, right? Doesn't make sense. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to think about. I don't like thinking about having to maintain my subscription. Do I need to turn it off? Do I need to turn it on? Because I'm not playing EA games right now. So the cost for me really becomes: am I going to be playing EA titles at a fast enough clip to justify? And I'm not sure. I don't know. It's just right now I'm still struggling with that price point.
But is it the cost, Swiss, or is it the like peace of mind? Because I guess when you said it doesn't fit you, I guess I kind of wanted to, I don't really mean challenge, but I wanted to ask because it seems like you're the type of gamer who if this is the thing that gives you access to Horizon Zero Dawn, you go. I mean, minus some like warehousing of titles that occurs for some limited period of time, but basically you go and get a game and you pick a point in time where you're going to hyper focus on that game and drive through completion, right? So it seems like this would be the service that would...
I still haven't bridged the gap for kind of viewing video games and like streaming television. For me, streaming television, I can go to Netflix and watch a Stranger Things, you know, with my wife and finish season 1, and then we come back a year later and finish season 2, and that's fine. If it goes off Netflix, I'm cool with that. I don't feel like I need to own it, but for me, like, even though it's digital, I like knowing that, okay, I paid for Horizon Zero Dawn, I have it. It's not tied to I'm not renting it in a permanent fashion. And it's probably just a mental block for me, but I don't like thinking, man, I'm having to pay money every month. I like to know, okay, I paid for Horizon Zero Dawn. It's on my shelf. When I'm ready to play it, I can dive into that. I'm not being pressured to experience the EA backlog of games, which I think I'd feel pressured to do, knowing that, you know, I'm always the juice is always running. And I guess that's more my mental block right now.
So I'm going to speak up. I don't know that I'm in favor of it in terms of the model of, you know, really of subscription service, but I'm in favor of the price point. And so I've been running the numbers. I have been trying to figure out if I was going to do this actually, because I enjoy Madden. I play Battlefield with friends. I am intrigued by Anthem, and I figured I was going to end up getting Anthem at some point in time. It was a question of what platform. And so, you know, to me, it becomes a number I know these are my gaming tastes. I'm running the numbers and looking at if I'm going to buy Madden, I can do the trade-in. I can do Gamers Club this year still with Best Buy, and you know, that gives me $40 for Madden, right? I can do the Gamers Club and pre-order it before it goes away on Best Buy or with Amazon and get $50 for Anthem, right? So right there is $90. If I play Battlefield for a little bit or any one of the back catalog games, there's another $10, right? And so I could pick up Battlefront 2 and play the story mission for $10. And I've hit my $100 for a year, right? If I think about this of if I pay $100, I'm paying less than $10 a month for a subscription to a couple games that I know I'm going to come back to on a regular basis. And you know, an Anthem, which is kind of going to be in that Destiny kind of MMO light type of looter shooter aspect, it's not all that different than what a monthly subscription fee would be for a WoW fan. Actually, it's cheaper than that.
Right.
Yeah, so
I guess
go ahead.
I guess my thought with that is I do think that it's a good deal this year because they're throwing like the Maddens and the Anthems and the Battlefields all like they're like, look, you're gonna get the filet mignon of EA's lineup, right? So yeah, totally $100 is great. I'm just thinking farther, and it's like, do I know that I'm going to want every single, like, I mean, each year am I going to be spending 2 or 3 get money on 2 or 3 of the tentpole EA titles. And do I like the fact that if I'm not going to get them this time, I will also lose access to my Anthem and my Battlefield? And, you know, yeah, for this year, it's going to be cheaper. But if I'm only playing Battlefield and Anthem, is it worth it to me to spend it, you know, for 2 years for those games? If I want to play them, you know, if they're a community type game, they're a multiplayer type game, is this, that's where I'm starting to think about it. And, you know, that $15 a month drove me away from WoW. So that's, I understand like the price point now. It's just, I wish I knew like way down the line what games would be coming to justify, okay, I know I'm going to be locked in for a few years and it'll be okay, is I guess where I'm at.
So DB, my question for you is, I get the math, right? It's basically it's 3 games. I mean, if you paid month to month, at most you'd be paying the cost of 3 EA games per year, right? And I feel like, I don't know everybody else, I'm probably pretty certain that I probably pay EA, you know, $180 for 3 games in a given year. You know, and if you do the annual, it's less than the cost of 2, and you're getting the deluxe editions. Unfortunately, maybe that's a better deal if they continue to do season pass, because you would get the season pass and access to the first round of DLC. My question for you though, DB, is, I know you're saying it's worth it, and when I think about it in those numbers, if this applied to all platforms, it would perfectly make sense, but it only applies to PC. So are there numbers up high enough for you on PC?
Yeah,
and I also want to ask you with this context, right? Because if you cash in on it for PC, you've got access to that stuff, but you're not playing with 70% of your friends, right? So now are you buying those titles again with a local site license on PlayStation or Xbox?
Yeah, right. I think that's again, me personally, that's been kind of the factor that's held me back from pulling the trigger at this point, right? Where I've got people that I know I will play Battlefield 5 with on Xbox, and so my question is, do I play it on PC and learn the maps and use my 10 hours of EA access, which again is $30 a month on Xbox, or $30 a year, you know, and I have been thinking about Anthem in terms of where I'm going to play that from the get-go, and do I play that on my PS4 Pro for the graphical quality? But if I'm going to do this with Premiere, I feel like you're right. It does lock you into a platform, and it would be nice if it was any type of cross-platform, or if they had this same type of service on Xbox, I'd jump at it without even a hesitation, because the community aspects there. And so, yeah, I think, again, there's a lot of factors here for people, depending on the type of gamer you are, like you, Swiss, where you're looking for certain experiences, or if you're looking for going where your community is, that it may end up creating communities for some people, but it may kind of tie people's hands in other ways.
Real quick, I'll ask you first, Agasicles. Do you fear that this current year's lineup of games is kind of the introductory rate, and, you know, in subsequent years we may see, or a few years when EA Origin is really rolling, we may see the AAA mega titles no longer be part of the subscription, but maybe you get it at a discount? Or, oh, well, you want to play Battlefield 7, you need the additional $4.99 a month Battlefield 7 pass.
I don't worry about that personally, because for me, at least right now, gaming is all me, right? And I have proven to myself in the past that I have zero problem with firing you as a company and not consuming your content if you do something that breaks threshold on my constraints, right? Xbox was exiled from my house for 4 years, and I had no problems, right, living without it. Now, that formula maybe gets weird if in future years my daughters are big gamers and they're consuming from that subscription, right? Because Amazon has me now, because I'm not giving up my library of Disney movies that I have to put the kids in front of, right? So Amazon gets now their $120 per year despite their rate increase. So no, I don't worry about that, because there's nothing that EA has that I play that I feel like is essential, and I guess I would contend, and I don't think that any gaming publisher has any franchise that for me I can't substitute or replace with something else.
I would say Nintendo does, but anyway. DB, same question. Do you fear the price games?
No, because I think that again, at least under the current kind of industry models, I feel like this is EA is not worried about giving you their game at a discounted price because it gets you in their ecosystem. That where they're going to make their most money is buying card packs, is buying loot boxes, whether or not they're going to call them loot boxes, right? I can buy cosmetic armor within Anthem. I spent $20 on card packs last year for Madden, but I never bought the game. I played my 10 hours of EA access and waited till it became free on Xbox, but I still gave them money for card packs. So I think that's where they make a lot of their revenue. And once they, just like you said, Swiss, you feel like you want to play or you feel like you should play because you've committed the money. That's the mentality that's going to keep you coming back and playing and engaged in that game, which then they've got the hooks for other ways to get some money from you.
Cool. That was we kind of were trying to use that as a throwaway topic, just kind of, and of course, there's a lot more I want to talk about, but we're out of time. So, and as DB foreshadowed, when we have some Xbox Scarlet talk, we'll be revisiting this. So, the next story, go ahead, DB, and tell us about Fallout 76, and then Agasicles and I will take up the other two. Our next three stories are kind of all linked together for our main discussion.
Sure. So Fallout 76, again, this is the game coming this fall. They announced that they're going to have a beta that's beginning in October, but not everyone is going to get into the beta on initially, right? So you can pre-order to get access to apply to the beta or to see if you get selected. Clarified that everyone who pre-orders at the participating retailer will included in the beta. The break it early test, right? The idea of that they will get a small start to the game. But really what kind of the interesting piece here is that it's not just going to be for a game that we still don't necessarily, at least I don't feel like we know a whole lot of where it's going to be between Rust and a traditional kind of Fallout experience, that the beta is not going to be completely open the entire time. It's going to be kind of expanding out as it goes. And so that's kind of they've kind of come out and clarified a little bit further in terms of right. Ubi's done this. Lots of people. Call of Duty is doing a beta this coming weekend for Black Ops 4 if you pre-order. So pre-ordering and getting access to a beta is not a big deal, but pre-ordering and getting the chance to get access to the beta is kind of what gave this news story a little bit of headlines.
It's the loot box of betas. All right, Agasicles, do you want to take the first No Man's Sky story with GOG? Because I know you are actually inquiring about that in our Flock client this week.
Yeah, so I have a few games in my library from GOG.com, formerly known as Good Old Games, and now like a lot of acronyms in the technology space. It actually doesn't mean Good Old Games; it just means GOG, which is a trend that I've never approved of, but we'll deal. So for whatever reason, the GOG version, everybody knows the No Man's Sky story, right? No Man's Sky Next, or let's say we go back, No Man's Sky, a storied history of a developer and a publisher that, for various reasons, maybe arguably overpromised more than they actually delivered when the game initially released, much to the chagrin in a lot of cases, but also much to the hatred spewing, temperament of other gamers who bought No Man's Sky. And they've spent about 2 years just slowly kind of culling the harvest and trying to deliver the game that maybe arguably people expected the first time around. Again, much like I say about Destiny, I think there are parts of that weigh to a certain extent on the consumer and the customer and their expectations, and some of that weighs on the publisher and the developer. But at any rate, all was set ready to be corrected this past week when No Man's Sky Next released. However, those who purchased it from GOG did not receive the multiplayer component. I think more exacerbating to the issue is those who ordered it from GOG didn't receive the multiplayer component and didn't know and weren't told until people who had already paid for it discovered so themselves and were asking, hey, where's the multiplayer? Now, truth be told, it's difficult for me to believe, particularly while I was in this mode of trying to find ways to be forgiving of Hello Games and to say that, we should all now, breathe a sigh of relief and give them the congratulations that they deserve. This is a particular stick in the ointment where it definitely flies in those things of like people who launch things on weekends and then things break. And I'm like, how in the world could you allow that to happen? Didn't you rehearse that 200 times? Didn't you have 59 people on standby for when the guy threw the switch so he wasn't standing there by himself? I kind of don't get this. What I will mention before I flip it over to you guys is there is mention in here that Hello Games is working with GOG to bring multiplayer. And one of the things that it seems to be inferred, maybe in between the lines, is that Hello Games didn't know what to use on GOG to set up multiplayer, right? GOG and its Galaxy app, which is kind of its equivalent of Steam, that app is very immature from a technology perspective. And I myself ask, if they had multiplayer, what would you have used to coordinate meeting up with people? Is that in-game? I mean, you guys have it. Is that in-game, or do you do that via like a Steam invite? Like I know when Gray and I play Star Trek Bridge Crew, the invite, the back end of the invite is really Uplay, right? When I can go into a game menu and send Gray an invite, but the way it gets to him is it goes back to Uplay and then sends it to him and then surfaces and is presented in the game. But the actual service it's leveraging is Uplay.
So I have not played multiplayer yet, but it looks like it's in game, right? So when you boot it up, you can choose if you're going to play on your own, invite players, or play isolated, or join a friend's. You can create your own world and have friends join, or you can join a friend's. And so I think what I haven't tried is to see if that connects back out to an existing friends list.
But you're playing on Xbox, right?
And PS4. So yeah, I don't know on PC.
I have it on Steam. And I've booted it up and played a little bit. Have not gotten to the point where I'm going to test the multiplayer out yet. But my impression is the same as DB's. You got to join or start your game, or continue your game, or join a friend. So I'm assuming that that's just a simple hook into the Steam client, which is why GOG would be different. I mean,
right.
I mean, Steam is. Yeah, you can argue all you want that there's plenty of different, Office suite applications out there, but Microsoft Office is the de facto standard. Steam is the de facto PC standard right now, so it makes sense that they would have focused on that. I think. I mean, I understand why, but it doesn't account for what as you alluded to, Agasicles, about throwing it out there with an obvious glaring hole and not communicating it.
Well, it also I think it begs the further question, right? Because Swiss, you worked with me, and my religious stance on interfaces to external systems and the way that I approach that. And you also know my approach of, look, I'm going to ask you to spec your interface, and I'm going to ask you 2 or 3 times, and after I ask you the 3rd time and you don't deliver, then that's on you, right? So it's a little presumptive, but I'm going to say I suspect it possible that there was hey, what do you guys want us to hook this multiplayer to, right? 2 or 3 times. GOG, who's not like a super huge company and is a little, I think, immature just in what they've faced, right, and had to contend with. I don't know that GOG gave Hello Games that answer within their timeline, and Hello Games was like, look, we're super busy, we got to move on, right? Because Hello Games would have had to have asked GOG what was the interface, right? What was the API? Right, exactly. And it doesn't look like they got that answer, and I feel like Hello Games was like, you need to tell your customers they're not getting multiplayer.
So yeah, it's I would say that was the maybe the dark spot on what was a pretty good week though for Hello Games in general. Our last story before we really kick off into the discussion is so after I got this from Game Informer. After its big update, No Man's Sky is one of the most played games on Steam. So we don't need to recount, the speed bumps in the road. But with Next coming out a few days ago, Sean Murray, I guess, is he technically the CEO of Hello Games? Or is he the owner? I'm not sure what his official title is there, but he tweeted out that let's see, the game had become, quote, one of the most played games on PC, PS4, and Xbox. And he showed a picture. Never thought we'd be here 2 years later. No Man's Sky is one of the most played games, and I think it was 6th in current player count, behind Dota 2, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, PUBG, Warframe, GTA 5. And then came No Man's Sky. So this No Man's Sky Next definitely revived interest in the title. And I don't know if it's too soon to call it a phoenix from the ashes, but the hype train's rolling among the E2KG crew. So that's going to be probably a preview of tomorrow's episode. But I think tonight the aspect that we need to focus on is not No Man's Sky in particular as a game and Hello Games as the developer of No Man's Sky, but we kind of want to talk a little bit more about the meta of the industry and promises. So promises made, promises kept, promises failed, and then promises perhaps imagined. So DB, you're the one that kind of pitched this angle, and it's why we brought the Fallout 76 story in. With No Man's Sky, gamers were really hyped for a particular experience. They didn't get that experience. Do you see the same perhaps happening with the Fallout 76 just because we don't have many details right now?
So I'm going to say no, and mainly because we're talking about Todd Howard versus Sean Murray. And Sean Murray as the lead designer of No Man's Sky, I've listened to a number of and read a number of stories and interviews because he was back out doing the interview rounds over the last week or so. And a lot of Sean Murray wasn't media trained. He wasn't a PR person, that this was a developer. And a lot of what ended up coming out of his mouth was genuine from a creative person's desire, right? And so I guess it's almost like that Peter Molyneux piece, right? Where in his heart and in his mind that this is where they think the game's going to get to, but in reality, it's never going to. The technology's there, not there. The timeline, the money, whatever the limiting factors might be. So when Sean Murray was talking about multiplayer, right, that might have been on a design document somewhere, right? That what never followed up was kind of the frank discussion before launch saying, yeah, okay, this is what it is. This is the extent that we can deliver, right? I think that there were limitations there. But in Fallout 76's piece, I think Bethesda, one, is a little more tightly controlled in terms of a PR machine, and that they're not going out and promising the world, right? I think that they've said there's going to be some quests, but they've also said it's going to be, they haven't said enough of it to really give people a whole lot of answers, right? We've got a little bit from the E3, but they've also been relatively quiet since then. So I don't think that Fallout 76 is going to land in that same type of No Man's Sky, failed, deflated expectations. But it's certainly, with development cycles and PR cycles being as they are, it's a risk that a lot of games have the potential to run of over-promising and then having to still ship a product for the consumer business bottom line.
So it sounds like you're putting the impetus on the developer and taking the you're not really, I don't want to say criticizing or accusing, trying to find the word, but it's not the fault of the gamer for having unrealistic expectations. Sounds like you'd more point the fingers at the PR machine in the industry.
So I think so. I mean, I think that this was, gamers read into it what they wanted to hear, right? This is not unique to gamers, that consumers of any type of information, we can talk about sports or politics or religion, and people will read into it and hear the parts that they want to hear and what validate what they're hoping for, and disregard the rest as minor pieces, right? That's there's human psychology in there. I think the fault then becomes in the developers or the PR machine. And in some cases with Hello Games, the fact that there wasn't really one, and Sony, I personally put a little more blame in Sony, is that they didn't step in and say, wait a minute, this is, they stayed quiet and let the hype build because it was better for their bottom line, even if they maybe knew what the game really was and didn't come out and clarify that. So yeah, I put the onus not on the the fault of our own human psychology. Certainly, I think we could talk about if we share that fault. Agasicles, I'm curious on where you land on this. Is this individual hype gone awry, or is this publishers looking to cash in on everybody that they can?
Like you mentioned, I probably put a big chunk of this on Sony. Like I'm kind of flabbergasted how, I mean, Sony, who's a publisher for these guys, like, remarkably silent as this all went down. Like, I don't know that I ever heard Sony take an official stand, and I'm like, come on, guys. I mean, you went out, you grabbed this game from a small, pawn shop size outfit, 2 developers really at the outset, working out of a guy's house, and you don't give them any kind of coaching or mentorship. You just leave them out to hang and dry. And I don't really understand that at all. Like, we have, Xbox has its ID program. Sony has something similar for indies, and it seems like for whatever reason there was none of that structure offered to Hello Games, and I kind of don't get it. So I put a lot of that on Sony, a little bit on developers, because, and admittedly I didn't track it, so I don't know exactly what Sean said over the years, but I definitely feel like I had the sense that people were asking for a lot more than he ever said. I will say at the end, I think people were asking for a lot more than he ever said at volume. Like, maybe he made mention of some of the things he was shooting for, but what I recall is when I heard, like, the majority of what I heard was not synonymous with the majority of the expectation that people seem to have. And I kind of always question how were 2 people going to deliver something that it seemed like people were expecting something that rivaled Star Citizen, which I also mentioned, as we talk through all of this, right? At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that this small, shop of developers that number in the single digits, with apparently no additional financial backing from Sony, right after their initial delivery was made, somehow figured out how to deliver something that, in my opinion, exceeds what Star Citizen is, while that organization continues to bank millions of dollars from people and can't deliver a game. So, I mean, it's, are people really going to take a stand and shout down at Hello Games when, to me, they've pulled off something remarkable in comparison to, what takes Ubisoft and EA, and, I mean, heck, DICE deploys games that they never fix, right? So, that's got to count for something.
I definitely think that the No Man's Sky story is trending to be a positive story. Like you both have been saying, kind of sounds like a small team that's lacking PR savvy, but also getting caught up in the excitement of releasing, their magnum opus, so to speak, to the world at large, and the world at large is actually very interested. Maybe got carried away in what, realistically they could develop. I mean, you know, I know as a software engineer, and you know as a manager of software engineers, if I come to you and say, "Hey, man, I can get this done in 4 weeks," what are you going to put on your project planner?
Well, I know what you're driving at. My response might be a little more complicated than you're looking for, but I'll give you the answer you're looking for. I probably put 6 to 8 weeks on my calendar.
Okay. We won't go into details.
Right.
I had another software manager that would always multiply by 3. Just because developers are intrinsically prideful creatures, and we tend to think about anyway. It never goes. The happy path never arrives. There's always going to be something bad that happens. So I can understand overpromising. I'm more intrigued by what DB said with the better for the bottom line. At what point does building hype become unethical? I mean, now, No Man's Sky obviously had some of this stuff on the roadmap, and perhaps to hit Sony's target release date, they had to chop it out, wait till later to put it in, or they just were too optimistic about their timeline. But you turn that around with a game like Star Citizen, as Agasicles mentioned, they're promising all this stuff and we haven't seen anything yet. So when does hype become unethical? And isn't it the job of the developer to, as long as they're not outright lying, to make it the most appealing product for the consumer as possible?
So I'm going to take off my rose-colored glasses for a minute and go back to 16, because this is something I remember saying this spring when I revisited No Man's Sky for my gaming assignment, was that it's a survival game. It is not. It's not this big space opera, right? That there's bits and pieces of a story there. If you make it, there's a whole lot more story there than there was at launch. But a lot of the story that existed at launch was a story of Minecraft, right? It's what can you make that narrative, right? If you're going to stream that, or you're just going to make your own headcanon about it, and the spaceship pieces were kind of ancillary. The combat controls were not huge, right? That even that has been grafted on. Vehicles didn't exist until later updates. Base building didn't exist until later updates. So yes, while I still think that there's a lot of, I think that there's responsibility on the publisher's front and the developer's front, but one of the things that they didn't do, even if we were hearing things, is that they really didn't come out and clearly say what this game is. That even now, after all the updates, that this game is still a survival game. It's still a resource management game. It is not going to be, they're not promising it to be the end all space. You're not going to have, it's not also going to be EVE Online, and it's not going to be Elite Dangerous in terms of everybody getting on a freighter. There are limitations to it, but those limitations still aren't really being talked about. And so I think that is, there's a piece there of that unethical. I don't know if it's unethical or if it's just opaque, right? That it does them well to just show a few screenshots and describe it loosely, but it's not out there as, it's not a survival game. I mean, it's not being billed as a survival game, and it's still pretty much a survival game, at least from, again, even revisiting it in the last week.
Agasicles did, I mean, you immediately, when we started pitching this topic, you immediately grafted onto Star Citizen and the ethics of these promises. I mean, do you feel like, in general, gaming PR is do you view it like glass half full or glass half empty? Do you view it as a cynic?
No, I guess I view that there are these handful of exceptions, these outliers, right? I think by and large, the game industry has predominantly figured out how to market games and how to say that a game is a thing. I think there are three key things that I think that are driving things askew these days. Is one, I just think that the industry is evolving in terms of what consumers expect. I think there is this experience level that is instantiating itself of gamers who are accustomed to being delivered a certain thing, and those things being levels. Maybe I should say that differently. Maybe it's not so much an experience that's seeding itself, but it's more of a democratization and expectationary democratization. It's about gamers who feel like they have a right to provide input on their consumer experience, right? Whereas before, you really kind of didn't have that, right? You really went, you paid your $60 for a game, shut up, go home, play your Madden. And you can write your letter, your email into whatever gaming magazine you subscribe to. But these days, more and more, and developers have opened themselves up to this. Gamers feel like if they feel like they didn't get their money's worth, they think that they have a right to jump up and down and demand, recompensation. And how devs are dealing with that is driving that dynamic one way or another, right? I think most famously, we have the whole Mass Effect thing of them redoing the ending of Mass Effect 3, which quite frankly, I will state directly, I didn't agree with. I wish they would have just held their ground and said, no, this is our creative thing. You guys pound sand, right? There's no way in the world that you get to ask for your money back because you bought a book and you don't like the ending. Like, are you paid to see a movie and you don't like how it? What in the world is that?
Right? Who leaves a movie theater? And I mean, granted, people do plenty now, but you still don't get your money back.
Right.
They're not gonna recut to do the fan edit.
Yeah.
Right?
They should though. I mean, you should be able to, like Steam. You can get your refund after 2 hours. You should be able to go to a movie for like 20 minutes, and then if it stinks, you can leave. And
there's shades of gray that, right? I agree. If you walk into a movie and the movie is rated PG, and in the first 10 to 20 minutes of the movie you're presented material that is completely not PG, right? Yes, I think you should be able to walk out and say, "Hey, what the heck?" But if you sit through this is the hamburger that you eat 95% of, and then get to the last bite and go, "You don't like it," right?
This is the end user license agreement.
Right.
The game is as we coded it.
Yeah,
you pay for what it is.
So there's that. And again, I think, unfortunately, I think in this effort to chase different dollars, right, and as financial constraints have evolved in the system, I'm not going to remember what the third thing is. I think I can only hold on to the second thing. So the second thing is that you have the Destiny experience, right, where there was an effort to spoke out from the hub and create something different and set a different set of expectations. And how that has been handled is causing a reactionary vibe throughout the market, where, again, my stance is you paid $60 for Destiny or Destiny 2. That has historically meant that you get what, 8? I mean really 8, because the OG Max Payne was about 8 hours of gameplay. You get, I'll say 12 just to mark it up. You get somewhere between, I'll say 10. You get 10 to 40 hours of gameplay, right, is what we were historically. I mean, 40 hours of gameplay was considered top-notch return on investment for a $60 game. Bethesda skewed things a bit by coming out with the Morrowind series, where gameplay started to stretch to 80 hours, but those were outliers. But now, for some reason, people, like, you get 24 hours easily of single-player campaign gameplay in Destiny 2. In my opinion, people have no right to act angsty about what they're getting for their $60, but they have, and they've been patronized and listened to, and that's creating a different thing in the industry, in my opinion.
Well, I really like kind of your point about gamers feeling like, in the age of social media, the wanting to be a part of it. Now, that's encouraged with the likes of early access and whatever, and which is billed as, hey, you can contribute to our evolution of the game, but it's glorified QA. And then but to bring it around to DB's point with Hello Games, that opacity, you know, the vagueness that you can describe the game, it just is like oxygen for that gamer, you want to call it democratization, you know, the pitchforks of the world, like, you know, torches and pitchforks crews of the world. They just, it just feeds into all of that. The fact that, you know, Hello Games doesn't establish a clear genre or something, it allows gamers to perhaps put imprint upon the game what they want it to be, rather than what the developer's true vision is. So the opacity kind of, they kind of let it boil to a certain extent.
Right, and the unfortunate thing is this is happening. I mean, when you look at the history, right, it's happening to the games that are trying to do something different, right? The publishers and the developers that are shutting up and making stock first-person shooter, stock third-person action-adventure game, stock RPG, those guys aren't getting beat up, right? And so, to be quite honest, if I'm a big publisher with a lot of dollars, I go, I know you guys want to do something innovative. You know what? Let me spin off an independent studio that isn't directly associated with us by name, right? I pull a one. I'm Oppo and I pull a OnePlus, right? And I let those guys sit out on their own and do their own thing. But like my core beehive of stuff that I'm churning out, right? Stuff that fits nicely, neatly, and succinctly into a specific genre, and I say, this is what you get for $60. I'm not having a conversation with you about your dissatisfaction. If you don't like it, don't buy the next game. Give me a bad review. But I'm not going to have an ongoing rolling wave back and forth dialogue with you being upset on a 12-month ROI cycle with your expectation that the $60 you spent is supposed to keep giving you something back. I don't. The industry was never wired for that, and I think they're going through a lot of pain right now, coming off of that model.
A discussion for another day is whether the neatly boxed genre games are good for the industry or bad for the industry. I know in Hollywood I find it infuriating because, you know, every movie is designed for when you have a group of people sitting there reviewing the movie, whatever, screen test, whatever that's called. You know what it is. It's late.
Yeah, everything's focus group to death,
Focus
right?
group,
I mean, that idea of it, all the creative edges are rounded off to be the lowest common denominator.
Right. So it'd be interesting to talk about that in games. But we are out of time, and it's late in the East Coast. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Does anybody have any pitches for E2KG coming up? No shout outs? Nothing? We all got things to do, places to be, and games to play. So with that, I think for DBqHams and Agasicles, and I am SwissGuard, and I thank you for joining us and listening, and please come back tomorrow for our Gamer Experience show, where DB will put some games out there with a very EA-centric flair, I think.
I think so. And we get the Lunchbox reporting out, right? Prime's going to talk about his GameCube games.
All right. I guess that's it, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.